proud owner of this 2025 Benamar Primero. It comfortably accommodates 4 people and can be driven on your standard driving licence. Plus, you'll also bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
the People's Channel?
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Miriam Cates and you're watching GB News. Coming up in the next hour, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer announces plans to roll out digital ID cards to all UK adults, a move he says will help tackle illegal working. But the backlash has been sizable. Is this the start of Britain's surveillance state? And a new mega poll predicts that Nigel Farage will become the next Prime Minister. YouGov surveyed 13,000 Brits and the results put Reform UK on course to be the largest party in Parliament. But with 4 years to go till the next general election, can the light blue surge continue? And US President Donald Trump has introduced the death penalty in Washington, D.C. as part of a crackdown on violent crime. Britain abolished capital punishment in 1965, but we'll be asking, is it time to bring it back? And figures released today by the Office for National Statistics reveal that Britain's population grew by an astonishing 755,000 people between 2023 and 2024, entirely due to net migration. We'll be asking, is mass immigration here to stay? And joining me, I've got my panel tonight, pollster, academic and GB News presenter Matt Goodwin and left-wing commentator Martin Abrams. But first, the latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Miriam, thank you. The top stories. Digital ID will be mandatory in order to work in the UK as part of plans to tackle illegal migration. Sir Keir Starmer said the government would introduce a new ID system by 2029, saying it would make it tougher to work in the UK illegally and offer countless benefits to citizens, he says. However, opposition parties argued the proposals would not stop people crossing the Channel in small boats. The Tories have branded the move a desperate gimmick to stop the Channel crossings. A petition urging the government to abandon their plans has now surpassed 1 million signatures. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Helen Whately spoke to GB News.
We don't want to have a society where people can be stopped in the street and asked to show their ID. Completely opposed to that. And the fact is, this was an announcement rushed out at the last minute, and it's a last-minute thing from Keir Starmer to try and distract from all the problems. It's just a smokescreen for the failures of him and his government.
Announcing the news at the Global Progress Action Summit in London this morning, the Prime Minister also used his speech to insist that centre-left parties are not dying out. He used the keynote address to say it's time to directly confront challenges in society. In his speech, he hit out at Tommy Robinson and, quote, cynical political opponents. He added that people are very disappointed with the pace of change and that Labour must reclaim patriotism from Reform UK. Elsewhere, dozens of diplomats walked out of the UN's Assembly Hall as Israel's Prime Minister took to the podium. As the session's chairman called for order, there were boos and cheers while delegates stormed out. Benjamin Netanyahu used his speech to speak directly to the hostages held in Gaza and to the terror group Hamas. He also said recognition of a Palestinian state is sheer madness. He says it's insane and we won't do it, adding that recognition by several other countries is disgraceful. Donald Trump has since spoken about a potential deal on Gaza before he boarded Marine One at the White House. The US president saying he believes the deal will get hostages back and added it's going to be a deal that will end the war. In other news, a nursery worker who abused 21 babies has been jailed for 8 years as parents of her victims branded her the worst kind of human. Roxana Lecker from Hounslow in West London admitted 7 counts of cruelty to a person under the age of 16, was convicted after a trial of another 14 counts over her sadistic actions at 2 nurseries. The 22-year-old's crimes were discovered in June last year after she was sent home for pinching a number of children at Riverside Nursery in Twickenham in southwest London. The man who was wrongly convicted of killing Jill Dando has today been charged with rape and indecent assault. Barry George has been charged with sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl almost 40 years ago. The CPS said the charges relate to non-recent allegations that took place in 1987. Mr. George was convicted of the 1999 murder of Jill Dando, but the conviction was overturned on appeal. He was later unanimously acquitted by a jury after a retrial. Nigel Farage is on course to be the next Prime Minister, according to a new YouGov poll. According to the polling prediction, if there was an election held tomorrow, there would be a hung parliament with Reform UK winning 311 of the 650 seats, just 15 short of the winning line of 326. In practice, it would be impossible for anyone other than the party leader, Mr Farage, to secure the largest number of MP backers and ultimately become Prime Minister. And former leader of the Liberal Democrats, Lord Ming Campbell, has died at the age of 84. Walter Menzies Campbell, often known as Ming, had a parliamentary career spanning 5 decades and served as leader of the party between 2006 and 2007. His grandson praised him in a statement, saying, like so many of us, I greatly benefited from Ming's advice and guidance over the years, also praising him as a warm and caring friend and colleague. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more from me in an hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Good evening. Welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and joining me until 7 o'clock, I've got my panel, pollster, academic and GB News presenter Matt Goodwin and left-wing commentator Martin Abrams. And of course, do get your views in. gbnews.com/your say. We'll be reading out your opinions throughout the hour. Well, the main story of today, of course, is that the Prime Minister has announced the rollout of digital ID cards for every adult in Britain.
I'm announcing this government will make a new free-of-charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament.
Well, it's going to be named the Brit Card, and apparently it will crack down on illegal immigration and stop migrants from working in the shadow economy. But the plans have faced backlash as well. Over 1 million people have already signed a petition demanding that Number 10 drop the policy. Now, I'm joined by journalist and commentator Angela Epstein, who has written a piece in The Spectator defending digital ID cards. I must say, huge thank you to you, Angela, for being willing to come on and defend this, because, of course, we've had lots of objections to this today. Now, Angela, in your piece, you've written about how you were one of the early adopters of a trial ID card that the last Labour government brought in some time ago. Tell us a little bit about that and why you're still in favour of the digital ID.
Well, thank you, Miriam. And yes, tin hat on, because obviously the extent of the backlash has been significant, to say the least. So basically, back in 2009, the then Labour government introduced a scheme which offered people an optional ID card. It was piloted in Greater Manchester, which is where I live, and therefore I was in a pole position to get one very quickly, which I did. I was, claim to fame here, one of the first to get one in the country. And my mission was purely pragmatic. I saw it. It was the size of a credit card, so it fitted easily in the wallet, and it was a simple, practical, safe way to be able to prove identity without having to sort of find a utility bill or a council tax statement. And also, I don't know about you, but when you lose your passport, it is catastrophic. It takes ages. And it meant that this is obviously pre-Brexit. I could travel across Europe if I went on holiday without taking my passport. So for lots of practical reasons, I signed up for one. They weren't free as these are mooted to be now. I think it was 30 quid. And I just found it incredibly useful. It was then junked the following year when the coalition came to power, the Lib Dem and Conservative coalition. And in fact, I was invited to speak at a parliamentary select committee on the invitation of the Labour then in opposition, to sort of, mount a defence for ID cards. Obviously didn't hit the target because they junked the scheme. But what they did do was honour the lifespan of the card. So it was introduced in 2009. So for 10 years, I could use it as a form of ID, which I did repeatedly.
But Angela, I suppose
so useful.
That all sounds very useful and practical, but there is a marked difference, isn't there, between a physical identity document, which could be an ID card or a passport or a driving licence, which you hold and you keep and you choose when to present, and something that's a digital ID that is held centrally by the government, and whatever the guarantees that a particular government makes could be used for much more intensive purposes further down the line.
Okay, so I think that there are two separate issues here. There's the principle of whether having an ID card, a mandatory ID card scheme, is an infringement of civil liberties. I personally don't think it is. And the other issue is what form that ID card should take. So dealing very quickly with both, I think in the first instance, I have no problem with having an ID card. Other countries do it as a matter of security, as a matter of convenience. Every day we surrender willingly, albeit not at the dictate of the government, information about ourselves. And by the way, I should also add, Miriam, that I am not a fan of this government. They're a lame duck government, and the sooner they go, the better. It's only on this particular issue that I'm supportive. So it's not like a blanket support of the Labour Party. But, they're just, like I say, there's the convenience element. I think if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to lose. And every day you sign up with a new retailer to buy something online, join a gym, do your NHS app, driving licence, whatever you apply for, you have to surrender details. Even now, if you noticed in shops, they ask for your email address rather than giving you a paper receipt. So we do it all the time. Yeah. And the other thing is I actually do prefer a physical ID card, mainly because not everybody's smartphone friendly. The battery doesn't go on a card. And we do need, and like I said, because, as I said in my piece in The Spectator, because this government couldn't run a bath, never mind an administration, that we need something that's going to be free of tech glitches, that it's robust enough, and it's not going to cost the taxpayer millions. But the principal argument is I don't see why, as a matter of convenience and security, we shouldn't have ID cards.
Well, Angela Epstein, thank you very much for making the case.
Great
Huge
pleasure.
Appreciated. Enjoy your evening. Well, let's bring in the panel, Martin, because I do think there is a fairly straightforward case for having physical identity documents. Of course there is. We couldn't actually get through life without them. But to me, there seems something very, very different about this kind of centrally held database that could be used to track your movements. It could be used in a kind of social credit way like the Chinese do.
Yeah, I think it's very sinister, actually. And I'm old enough to remember 2006 with the Identity Card Act, where Tony Blair's government tried to introduce this back then, spent about £250 million of taxpayers' money, and it was a categorical failure. And
Well, Angela enjoyed hers.
People volunteered for it, but it was then scrapped by the Tory government after that. And this is reheated Blairism. That's what it is. And the reason I say it's sinister is because you need to follow the money with this. This scheme has been pushed massively by the Tony Blair Institute, OK? Tony Blair has his own massive think tank lobbying company called the Tony Blair Institute. That has been massively funded by a chap called Larry Ellison, a US tech billionaire who owns a company called Oracle. Okay, he has put in about £250 million to the Tony Blair Institute. Okay, this guy incidentally has just bought TikTok as well, and he's mad about data. He wants everyone's data. There is nothing at the moment more valuable than individual people's data. When we're moving to an era of artificial intelligence, you know, and things like, you know, tracking people's personal movements using, you know, different technology. These people are obsessed with harvesting data, whether that's health data, individual data, biometric data. Very sinister.
I mean, Matt, whether you agree with ID cards or not, the timing is... Well, I know you don't, and that's why we had Angela on to make the case, but the timing is extraordinary. 3 days ago, I think the Tony Blair Institute published a paper in favour of ID cards. This was not in the manifesto, and yet it's been announced as the solution to I'm not sure what problem exactly.
Yeah, so there's absolutely no democratic mandate in this country for digital ID. Nobody asked for this, nobody voted for this. This was not in Labour's manifesto. Now, everyone on the left and the right who believe in democracy can see all of that. But people out there need to be clear about what this is really about. This is about state control and overreach. The English conservative philosopher Roger Scruton said it best when he said that the state ultimately wants to replace civil society with state bureaucrats. Why? Because then you become dependent on the state. And if you depend on the state controls you. And that essentially is what they are trying to do. They are trying to make us heavily dependent upon the state. I agree with Martin. This will end up being a massive white elephant. It will be costing hundreds of billions of pounds. I mean, the state could not even build a high-speed train line from London to Northern England, and we're supposed to believe it can deal with digital ID. It's absolutely nonsense. It will do nothing at the border. It won't solve the illegal migration crisis. Germany has a comprehensive identity card program, still has illegal migration. France has got serious identity checks, still got illegal migration. I think what they've decided is we don't want to talk about the really tough stuff, like leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, repealing Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, detaining and deport. So we're going to throw this issue of digital ID onto the table. The arguments are already cooked up by Tony Blair and his pals at the think tank, and we're going to distract everybody with this. But everyone out there, I would suggest sign that petition, oppose digital ID. It is un-British, it's un-English, it's not who we are.
Martin, just to come back to you very quickly on the politics of this, Labour has a big majority, but backbenchers are not quite as disciplined as they were. And also, I imagine the House of Lords will have something to say about this. Do you think there's a chance that Parliament could actually stop it?
Well, you know, as you say, over 1 million people have signed this petition. Every single MP is going to have constituents that have signed that petition.
Yeah.
So there is going to be pressure being placed upon MPs from people that are opposed to this. Interestingly, the overall polling does actually show a small majority in favour of ID cards, which I think is going to shift once people start to properly understand the implications of this. But I think, you know, over the years it's been sort of, you know, having an ID card that you can, you know, use just to, you know, to get access to your, you know, things like benefits and the like. You know, there is a much more sinister background to this. So when people like, you know, Larry Ellison at the Oracle and other tech billionaires that have been sniffing around this, I think we need to be really careful.
And I also think because of what happened in COVID, people would be more likely to see the potential harms of this than they perhaps would have done before COVID. It'd be easier to convince people that the state might abuse its power. Anyway, at GB News, we do love to hear what you think. Every day we're going to run our poll of the day. And today we're asking, are digital IDs an attack on our freedoms? Well, if you scan the QR code that's at the bottom right of your screen right now, you can cast your vote. And for all of our latest polls, news and how to vote, just go to gbnews.com/poll. Now, don't go away because coming up...
Capital punishment, capital city. Right? It's capital, capital, capital.
Yes, that's the US President Donald Trump, and he's introduced the death penalty in Washington, D.C. as part of a crackdown on violent crime. Now, Britain abolished capital punishment in 1965, so we're asking, is it time to bring it back?
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show Live, every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Kate, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got Matt Goodwin and Martin Abrams here with me in the studio. Now, moving on to our next story, the US President has signed a proclamation ordering prosecutors in Washington, D.C. to seek the death penalty in eligible cases like murder. From the Oval Office, he declared the return of capital punishment to the capital city.
This is the death penalty for somebody that kills people in Washington, D.C. I think it's capital. It's a very interesting capital punishment, capital city. Right? It's capital, capital, capital.
Let's bring in our panel. Now, Matt, Trump's efforts to crack down on crime in DC have been quite controversial. Democrats have said there isn't really a problem, he's using it for political means. But there clearly is a violent crime issue in the United States. Yeah. Do you think the death penalty is an answer to that?
Well, it's certainly an answer for Trump's voters who want him to deliver on this tough on crime message, and he is delivering it. You know, the border crossings, another issue, but they're down to almost 0%. Going hard on crime is a no-brainer for Trump, given his voters. Now, should we have it here? For much of my life, I always oppose the death penalty for moral reasons, you know, for just simply many of the same reasons that a lot of people in London do. But as I've got older in life, I've sort of come to the view that I think there are some cases where the death penalty should be permitted. So the murder of children, take the Southport case as an example. My personal view is actually, yeah, I do think somebody like Axel Ruder-Cabana, that doesn't really do us any good at all to have somebody like that hanging around. And I do think there's a judgment for that. And I think also terrorist activity as well falls within that remit. Now, if you look at polling in Britain, those are the cases where support for capital punishment goes from about 40% nationally to about 60%. You know, if you're murdering children, if you are launching terrorist attacks against innocent people just trying to go to work and hanging around a city, business, there's actually quite a lot of support in the country for that. That's not why I support it. It's not just the polls. But I do think, the older I get, I think as a society, we do have to start drawing some lines in the sand.
Yeah. Do we need that ultimate deterrent, do you think, Martin?
I don't agree. No, I'm completely against capital punishment and the death penalty. If you just look at the US, which is meant to be the kind of standout, Western country with, the country that everyone is meant to look to. They have about 20,000 homicides a year in the US.
Despite having the death penalty.
Despite having the death penalty. So it doesn't act as a deterrent.
But the problem with the US is because their legal system is so entangled, it takes so long from someone being convicted and sentenced to death to actually being executed. People have forgotten what they've done in the 20 years they're on death row. I mean, justice delayed is justice denied. If you had a much more quick delivery, surely there would be a deterrent effect.
Surely them being in jail is justice for the victims in this. And over the years, 200 people since 1973 in the US have been exonerated from death row. So wrongly convicted. Yeah. So new evidence has come to light. And that is the real danger with capital punishment, that you're going to get the wrong person and you're going to kill the wrong person.
Yeah, but and
that has absolutely happened over the course of time.
But there are cases where it's very clear beyond doubt, where you have somebody who's convicted, being guilty, perhaps admits their guilt, perhaps the evidence is overwhelming. Let's bring this into real life, something like the Southport case, where you have somebody who was clearly guilty of murdering children. Now, to be honest, I'm not saying I support it because I think it would be deterrent. I'm saying I would support it in that case because I personally think it's the right thing to do in that case. And lumbering the British taxpayers with endless ongoing life support for child killers, I don't think is the right thing to do.
I think we just start to lose a bit of humanity when we look at the eye for an eye in terms of punishment. Being jailed for the rest of your life is
some would say that's crueler, actually.
Punishment enough.
Because the kind of sense of despair that someone must have receiving an entire life sentence. I mean, I must admit, I've been on the same journey as you, Matt. I used to completely oppose it, and one of the reasons I still, on balance, probably do is because I think the state's become so politicised that I do wonder if the right people would receive the death penalty. But I just think that ultimately we have to do more to deter serious crime, and that if there was the ultimate punishment, then it would have a trickle-down effect right down to lower levels of crime. And, like you say, there are some crimes that are just so heinous. How can people be let up?
But, Miriam, you also talk about prison being a deterrent. I don't think prison is a deterrent anymore. Even the cases that we've mentioned, we've discovered that the prisoners have had much more freedom and liberty than we were led to believe. Even the guy who bombed and murdered all of the children at the Ariana Grande concert at the Manchester Evening News Arena, he was allowed to wander around, or his brother was, within prison, and the murderers of the children at Southport. I don't think prisons are as tough as they should be.
I think that is actually a case for better funding of our prison system, because over the course of the last few decades, our prison system has been massively underfunded. Prison officers have been massively underfunded. They're under increasing stress and overwork and fatigue.
No, I agree with you.
There are workforce that aren't allowed to join a union because they're banned from being able to organise.
And they're so full that we can't lock people up quickly, and so people aren't jailed to their 45th estate. By which time,
what we also need in this country is a case to reduce recidivism for people reoffending. That's one of the biggest problems in this country. Is obviously, clearly jail to some people isn't a deterrent, but jail is also not going to rehabilitate a lot of people that need rehabilitating and bringing back into society.
We're going to have to leave it there, Martin, because we've run out of time on this section. But don't go away, because coming up, as the UK population surges due to an influx of immigration, has our policy spiralled out of control? Don't go anywhere.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're wondering where's good for the weather or heading south during the next few days, be aware there's a next hurricane approaching Portugal whilst it's staying breezy through Greece, particularly the Greek islands. Nothing too unusual about that. But for Italy, increasingly unsettled, some heavy rain and thunderstorms, particularly towards the south, and for Sicily. Across Iberia, settled on Saturday, but here's that ex-hurricane likely to bring some strong winds and heavy rain into Portugal in particular later in the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, I'm here with your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Now, as we go through this weekend, there will be some fine sunny weather around for most of us, but worth bearing in mind there's also going to be a band of rain pushing its way in. We can already see that out to the west of us, a front that's going to arrive as we go through overnight and into tomorrow. Before that though, plenty of dry weather still to come as we go through the end of today. A lot of the cloud that's developed will actually break up through the night across parts of England, Wales and into Scotland, and so some clear spells developing, especially across parts of East Anglia, where it's going to be quite chilly and some, well, locally thick fog could develop in a few spots, but elsewhere temperatures perhaps not falling quite as low as they have done through some recent nights. And then across Northern Ireland, turning increasingly cloudy and wet through the night, and some of that rain spilling into western parts of Scotland as well by dawn. Otherwise, first thing tomorrow morning, a dry start across central and eastern parts of Scotland with a bit of sunshine here and there, but turning increasingly wet from the west. A wet start across Northern Ireland, some spray on the roads, could be a bit of localised flooding as we go through the day because of some heavy persistent rain. A bit damp at times maybe across parts of Wales and southwest England through the morning, but a drier, sunnier picture the further east you are. Through the day we are going to see that band of rain continue to edge a little bit further eastward, so eventually clearing away from Northern Ireland with some heavier rain pushing into parts of southwest Scotland in particular, and some of that rain fringing into parts of western Wales and southwest England as well. Drier towards the east always, and some decent sunshine in which it will feel relatively warm as temperatures peak in the high teens Celsius. More wet weather across many western areas as we go through tomorrow evening. It's always going to stay that bit drier across central and eastern parts with not a huge amount of rain arriving here. Some rain though may linger across parts of the southeast into Sunday. Otherwise it's looking drier for many as we go through Sunday and into next week.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Expect disruption on the M90 at Junction 1C northbound due to a broken down vehicle at the Slip Road exit. Caution is advised. In East Riding of Yorkshire, an accident has closed all lanes of the M62 westbound entry slip at Junction 36. Drivers in Cambridgeshire should anticipate significant delays due to a road traffic collision on the A14 eastbound between Junction 18 Spaldwick West and Junction 20 Ellington, with one lane closed. Additionally, on the trains, there is disruption on cross-country services at Brockenhurst and between Selby and Hull on Hull trains. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Kate, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got the pollster, academic and GB News presenter Matt Goodwin and left-wing commentator Martin Abrams. And you've been getting in touch with your views. So far, none of you in favour of the digital ID. Kathy makes a really good point. If employers are giving jobs to illegal migrants without a national insurance number or documentation now, why would they suddenly want to see a digital ID? I think that's a brilliant point and a great argument against why it would work in the first place. Well, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has also commented. She's been speaking to reporters a short while ago and she set out her stance on digital ID.
We are opposed to mandatory digital ID cards. The government has not talked about this until now. They say this is to stop the boats. It will do nothing to stop the boats. They need to get a proper plan to deal with illegal immigration. But what we also know is that this will likely end up being used against law-abiding citizens while crooks walk away free, because that's what's already happening right now. We need the government to focus on the priorities of stopping the boats and getting the economic situation to an improved place.
Well, she seems to be where the voters are because a Snap poll from YouGov has just revealed that 42% of the public support this proposal, 45% oppose. So it does seem as though Labour MPs are going to be having some very full inboxes tonight. Well, sticking with polling, a new bombshell poll, also by YouGov, has revealed that Nigel Farage would be our next Prime Minister if an election was held tomorrow. This YouGov mega poll of 13,000 respondents found that Reform UK would win 311 seats, which would leave a hung parliament. But the Tories would be reduced to just 45 seats and Labour a long way behind. So let's bring in our panel on this. Matt, of course, you have a background in polling.
Yeah.
How useful, how accurate do you think these kind of polls are?
Well, this isn't any poll. This is an MRP poll, which is a more sophisticated poll. There have been 2 of these polls by YouGov since the election, the general election last year. Now, this one is telling us a pretty consistent picture as the national polls. It's basically putting Reform and Nigel Farage on course to emerge as the largest single party. So Nigel Farage, under that context, would be Prime Minister. They would have an enormous increase in seats. The Tories would be almost wiped out, but would probably at this point have to work supporting Reform in government. So Reform aren't there yet in terms of having a majority in their own right, but what you can see on the screen is really that political earthquake taking shape. And I have polled Reform voters as to why people are voting Reform. And the top 2 issues, and very few pollsters do this, but it's important, separate out illegal migration and legal migration. Then you find that Reform voters, number 1, say stop the boats, but number 2, lower legal migration, and then number 3, cost of living. That's why the intervention earlier this week by Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef with their plans to scrap the Boris wave, again, another policy with no democratic mandate in this country, was so important, because what Nigel Farage is saying is, look, the boats, critical, have to stop the boats, but let's just be serious with the British people. This is about legal immigration, mass uncontrolled immigration.
Yeah. Martin, what I see when I look at that chart is that the left is decimated. And even if Labour, Lib Dems, the Greens, any other independents joined together and formed some sort of coalition, they still couldn't form a government.
Well, at this point, I'm not sure you can count Labour as the left, can you? Because,
good answer.
Because of, how far Keir Starmer's Labour Party has drifted, to a kind of authoritarian shambles. And, the context of this is really important, because we're literally just over a year since the landslide Labour Party victory, 411 seats. It was a shallow landslide. Some people describe it as a loveless landslide, because people were just so sick of the Conservative government after 14 years. But to go this bad after literally just 14, 15 months in government is, I think, unprecedented.
Can I ask you a question? I know I'm jumping into Miriam's chair for a minute, but the other thing this polling shows, which I think is quite interesting, is so you're going to get the Greens, you're going to get the Corbyn party, the Your Party, you're going to get the Labour Party, and they're all going to be competing with one another in the same kinds of areas, in urban areas, diverse areas, student areas. Now, that is going to make life for Nigel Farage and Reform so much easier, because they don't have to compete in those areas. So how do all these different left-wing parties then go forward over the next few years? I assume there's going to have to be some kind of deal. Otherwise, you guys are just going to end up, it's going to be a, what do they call it, a circular firing squad?
Well, my view is there has to be some kind of agreement between if Your Party emerges and the Green Party, because, the Green Party are, doing as good as they've ever done at the moment. They're, often polling at 12, 13, 14%.
Yeah, they are.
There's been a few polls with Your Party, theoretically, if they existed, also polling at about 12, 14%. So that my view is there has to be some kind of arrangement between the two parties.
Labour are losing as much support today to the Greens as they are losing to Reform. So what we're going to see is something similar to 2019, where all the Remain-type parties were sort of cancelling each other out, which allowed, at that time, the Conservatives and Boris Johnson to realign politics. But this time, the issue won't be Brexit. This time, the issue will be mass immigration.
Well, hold that thought, because the other news today, of course, is the ONS has released the population statistics, which show that the population of the UK grew by 1.1% last year to a record 69.3 million people, making it the second largest annual population increase for more than 75 years. Now, I think the overall figure was 775,000 net increase, and pretty much the entirety of that increase has been net migration. Births very, very slightly outnumbered deaths, but only by 16,000 or so. And Matt, as you're saying, this is the issue that has become so noticeable to people over the last few years that it is driving many people's politics.
I mean, it's not only an issue, it's a disaster, what is happening to this country. 98% of all population growth is being driven by immigration. And you've said in the intro there that this is the second highest population growth on record, well, after 2023. So this is basically something and the only other population increases we had in history were because of natural change, because births among our people were greater than deaths. Just one stat that I think brings this home. In every single year since 1997, in every single year, there has been more immigration into this country than there was during the entire period between the Anglo-Saxons in the 5th century and the end of the Second World War. So when people tell us we've always been a country of immigration, relax, it's always been like this. I just think it's important, everyone out there should know this. This country has not always been a country of mass uncontrolled immigration. This country has not always been defined by this insane extreme experiment. And this country can no longer sustain this kind of population growth because clearly the state cannot provide basic public services while dealing with this scale of growth.
Why is the left more angry about immigration? The group of people that is most impacted by mass immigration are the poor, people who traditionally voted Labour.
Listen, it is a bit of a problem for the left because I think it's safe to say those of us on the left that think migration is a good thing also think that we can't have open borders.
Why is migration a good thing?
I know this is Matt's specialist subject, okay, but he's framing it as if it is basically completely uncontrolled. Anyone can come to this country. That is simply not the case.
They jump in a boat.
That is simply
they jump on a boat.
Listen, Matt. Okay, if you look at the figures.
Oh, actually, they can come on a boat and then go back to Afghanistan on holiday.
If you look at the figures from these overall net migration numbers, 5% are through irregular migration. I know you describe it as illegal migration. I think the proper term is irregular migration.
Illegal.
People coming on boats from across the channel.
Breaking our laws.
The other 95% is split between people that have come via legal routes that have to go through.
But Martin, we know that that's being exploited through, for example, the graduate visa route, where universities are basically selling visas, or the work visa routes, where it turns out that people come to work and then claim asylum, or the social care visa route, where 150,000 people were given visas and the vacancies only went down by 11,000. It might be legal, in inverted commas, but it's being massively exploited.
The vast majority of migrants that come to this country are net positive contributors.
That's just simply not true.
It is, Matt.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay?
I can't sit here and just let you lie to people.
No, it is. There have been multiple academic studies that show that the majority of migrants are net positive.
I'm sorry. That is simply I'm sorry, Miriam. Sorry. Can I just say something? That is not true. The Office for Budget Responsibility has made that clear. The vast majority of Boris Wave migrants who came in after 2021, 80% of them, 83% of them, came in as the relatives of workers, international students, who often then moved on to low-skilled jobs, refugees and asylum seekers. It's a net fiscal cost to the British people. And the left used to care about the British people. They used to care about British workers.
Oh, we do.
And yet I don't hear anybody saying, why are we maintaining a regime of mass migration, an influx of cheap migrant workers, to service globalist corporations to keep their costs low and their profits high, and then screwing over the British working class.
Matt, those of us on the left, we do care about people, okay?
You've just...
But the problem is, the difference is that we place the blame at this country's disintegrating social fabric at different people. You blame migrants, I blame the mass inequality.
No, I do not blame migrants. I blame Boris Johnson for presiding over a disastrous policy. I blame the Labour Party, the Labour government. I blame the Conservative Party and the Conservative governments that came before. I do not blame the people for trying to get a better life. I blame our leaders. I blame our leaders for not prioritising our own people.
So my view is that the inequality that we see in our society, and we see every single day, just walking out your front door, in London, you see how unequal our society is. There has been a mass shift of wealth and power to the richest people in this society. That is not the fault of migrants coming over here who often face persecution or are fleeing, very difficult situations. The reason we've got mass inequality in this country is because so much wealth has been siphoned to the top.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. But Martin, if you can find an academic study that shows that mass migration
Oxford
has had a net positive effect,
Economics estimates
then
that
please do
migrants from the
E8,
put it on £78,000.
I certainly have not seen that data. Well, coming up, we're going to take the temperature down because it is Friday, so it means that the Dewberry Tavern is going to open up. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GBNews family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates. We've now got the Dewberry Tavern open. Cheers, it's Friday night and I've still got my panel with me, Matt Goodwin and Martin Abrams, and you've been getting in touch with your views. Lots of support, actually, for bringing back the death penalty. Brian says absolutely bring back capital punishment.
Oui.
Stephen, capital punishment, definitely. Lots of people agreeing with that. I do think things have shifted in the wake of some of the crimes that we've seen in recent years. Well, on lower level crime now, ministers are pushing through new powers to photograph, name and shame offenders who are doing unpaid community work. For the first time, probation officers could legally publish the names and faces of those sentenced to litter picking, cleaning graffiti up or tidying verges. So is this tough justice or just public shaming? Martin, would you like to be named and shamed for cleaning up graffiti?
Well, again, this is just like the state of our current justice system at the moment is... like the punishments that are being handed down are clearly not helping with the reoffending rate that we see. We've still got one of the highest reoffending rates in Europe, whereas other countries that focus on rehabilitation, helping people reintegrate into society if they've made a mistake, because remember, a lot of criminals that get sent to jail, often it is their first offence as well, and you know, sometimes they just need a little bit of help and rehabilitation to reintegrate back into society. I don't think naming and shaming people like this is going to help with that.
But Matt, isn't shame the evolutionary mechanism for stopping us behaving bad? I mean, look at Japan, an incredibly low crime society, because they feel so much shame.
Do you know one of the things I do late at night when I shouldn't be online, brace yourself, is I look at
spreadsheets?
I look at the there's a great account on X which just simply puts videos of crimes being committed in London, and often it's young men going into shops and just putting things into rucksacks and nobody being able to stop them. Security guards not stopping them, the police are nowhere to be seen, and then I share them as well. There is a complete lack of shame in our society, because those people know the police are not going to come, there are going to be no consequences. And what actually really worries me is everyone else in that situation isn't doing anything. No one else is intervening. Nobody else is saying, actually, we don't want to live in a high crime society. I mean, I'd like to think if I saw something like that happening, I would intervene.
But the shoplifters like that, Matt, who are probably repeat offenders, who have probably got some kind of addiction problem because they're trying to feed a habit, you know, they obviously need to face, you know, justice for what they've done, but they also need help. They also need rehabilitation. They need to be reintegrated into society.
Well, so hang on. What do you mean by reintegrated? Because a lot of the crime is committed by prolific offenders, highly prolific offenders. They should not be on the streets.
No, they should face justice. So if they're prolific offenders, they should probably be sent to prison for a certain amount of time. But whilst in prison, they should be able to be rehabilitated, like they do in a lot of other European countries, rather than just slamming them in a cell. There is a little bit of money spent to rehabilitate these people, to get them off their addicted substances. Our prisons are so underfunded, there's not enough prison staff, so drugs and other substances are absolutely rife in our prison system.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that, but isn't the problem that we give people too many chances to start with? So I think that the most recent statistic is that only 50% of people with 45 offences are imprisoned. That's ridiculous. By the time you've committed 45 offences, you are a hardened criminal and you have no shame.
Yeah, well, that just goes to show the problems with our justice system as well.
And there's also, let's just be frank, there's also a very strong link between what's going on and the role of family in society, because shame also should operate at the level of parents and relatives. Where are the families of these prolific offenders? Where are the mothers and the fathers of these offenders? Because I think ultimately what lies behind a lot of this, especially in London, is disproportionately high rates of family breakdown within predominantly minority communities. That's what I think.
I'm not sure what this focus is on London. I know London is our capital city, but crime rates in London, you know, for the most serious crimes,
shoplifting's
have fallen
no, that's not true. That's not true. Shoplifting's are record high, violent crimes are record high, sexual assaults are record high.
For the most serious offences, crime in London has fallen significantly.
Shoplifting,
Homicides
violent crime,
down.
sexual assaults.
The most visible crimes, like snatch thefts and things like shoplifting, are on the increase, which then gives a perception
I am really interested in
of a high crime
this loss of
environment.
shame, and I think the problem is that Liberals over the last 50 years have decided that actually the government is there to be compassionate and we should understand why people are committing crimes. Now, of course, we should understand why people are committing crimes, and that's what families are there for, hopefully, to show that compassion. But actually, the role of government is not to show compassion. The role of government is to enforce the boundaries that keep us all safe. And we shouldn't be letting people get away with things. We should be a short, sharp shot, whether that's prison, whether that's being put in the stocks, whether that's being named and shamed, because that's what keeps society safe.
Well, I don't think it's any coincidence that the rates of shoplifting have increased massively over the course of the last 20 years during one of the most significant cost of living crises
But
and
they've significantly
periods of
increased since the
austerity.
Conservative government basically said if it's less than 200 quid, we're not interested. When boundary removed, crime goes up.
Well, listen, I'm a councillor in Lambeth, and my ward covers one of the longest high streets in Europe, and there's a lot of private businesses that are facing significant increases in shoplifting. But when I go to speak to those business owners, they tell me that often it is people that have never committed shoplifting before that are going in and chancing their arm because they're desperate. So you've got the repeat offenders. They need to be properly dealt with. The police need to be on the spot tackling these offenders, not just letting them fill their bags full of stuff. But because we're going through a cost of living crisis, there are people that are just absolutely desperate.
I don't think they are actually desperate. I think what has happened is we've had so many soft on crime policies, and we've had a collapse of social norms and the notions of decency and respect in society, that the guys I see on the videos going around, the phone snatchers, the 70,000 smartphones that were stolen in London last year, record rates of sexual assault and rape, which you're conveniently downplaying, unquestionably linked to mass migration. Through freedom of information requests, we know that. Nobody wants to talk about it, but that's a fact. All of that is not just about people being desperate and finding times are tough. It's just about a blatant disregard of the rule of law. And we need to re-establish the rule of law in this country. The reason Reform, by the way, are now leading the polls, it's not just because of migration. They've just spent all summer saying Britain is lawless. Crime is out of control. Criminals aren't getting punished. If your house gets robbed, nobody comes. The police won't come. If your bicycle gets stolen, if your phone gets nicked on the streets of London, you wouldn't even go to a police station.
What is that a result of? The result that is a result of being, mass austerity.
No, it is. No, I'm
It
sorry,
is.
I disagree with you. It's family breakdown, it's cultural malaise, it's a collapse of
20 years of cuts to the police, cuts to the justice system, cuts that you probably agreed with being on the right.
All of the
and
above.
This is the result.
Perhaps it's all of the above. Well, I thought I'd volunteer to start with this naming and shaming policy. This is my view. I think we should bring back the stocks. There we go. I sat in them earlier to demonstrate. Nobody threw any apples at me or even wet sponges, but maybe this is the way forward. Well, thank you both to my panel. Matt, you'll be up very shortly, in an hour's time, in fact, with your show. Thank you so much, Martin. Thanks to everybody watching at home. Coming up next, we've got Lee Anderson's Real World. And thank you all for participating. I think it's fair to say that GB News viewers are not in favour of digital ID. That's all from me. Have a great weekend.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. This is your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. After a largely fine, often sunny week, things are going to take a bit of a change weather-wise as we go into the weekend, because there's a front out in the west, and this is going to bring some heavy and at times persistent rain, particularly to western, northwestern parts through tonight and more so into tomorrow. But before that arrives, a lot of dry weather to end the day and through much of the night, and actually a lot of the clouds going to break up, particularly across eastern parts of England. And here with clear skies, temperatures taking a bit of a drop, a bit chilly first thing tomorrow morning, and watch out for some pockets of mist and fog. Elsewhere, a bit more cloud than we've seen through some recent nights, so not turning quite as chilly, and across Northern Ireland, well, it's a wet start to the day. Watch out for some strong winds with that rain that's pushing through. Ahead of that rain, actually there will be a few showery bursts of rain here and there across some southern and central parts of England and Wales. Largely dry though to start the day across parts of northern England and much of Scotland. Just that band of rain I highlighted at the start affecting some western parts of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland. Now that rain is going to gradually shift its way a little bit further eastwards as we go through the day, but it's not going to go through particularly quickly. So it really is across western, southwestern Scotland and eastern Northern Ireland where we're going to see the rainfall totals building up, and we do have a couple of warnings out because some disruption is likely to travel and also a bit of flooding in places as well. Elsewhere across other parts, actually a largely fine day, some sunshine breaking through, and with that in the sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking in the mid to high teens, may just about scrape into the low 20s. That front does eventually push through as we go through later and into Sunday, not bringing a huge amount of rain in the south, but a bit of cloud, a bit of rain lingering in the southeast through Sunday, and then some showery bursts further north. Otherwise, for many, Sunday's looking largely fine. And then as we go through into Monday and Tuesday, we sort of end up with a northwest-southeast split, always drier towards the southeast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists should be cautious on the M74 southbound at Junction 1 Seward Street due to an accident closing 2 lanes. Another accident affects the link from Junction 7 M18 northbound to Junction 35 M62 eastbound. The M6 southbound in Lancashire faces congestion, causing a 20-minute delay between junctions 36 and 35. There's a similar delay on the A14 eastbound in Cambridgeshire because of lane reduction between junctions 18 and 20. The A303 eastbound near the A345 in Wiltshire has a collision closing 1 lane. And on the trains, cross-country is disrupted at Brockenhurst and Hull trains between Selby and Hull. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benimar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000.